All right, looks like we have Dakota and TJ and Tyler today. Not Tyler, sorry, Kaylee, you're on Tyler's computer. Got it. And somebody else is arriving right now, and that's fantastic. All right, so sorry about last week. Sometimes circumstances are what they are, and I could not find a babysitter, but I'm excited about today because we have some pretty cool things to get to. I really like working with percents, and that's kind of what you are working on right now in sixth grade math. And then next week, you're going to be working with the conversions between percents, decimals, and fractions, and how those are all related. So we'll actually touch on that as well today. So we'll start with a little presentation on percents, and it will, oh, it's kind of loud, sorry. We'll have some practice problems along the way. Good morning, Jack. I see you just came.
Percent is a special ratio out of 100. The word percent can be thought of as percent or per 100.
Okay, so that's a good thing to
40
always
of these
remember.
100 books are about Alberta. We can say that 40% of the books are about Alberta. We can also use fractions to express percents. For example, 40 out of 100 books are about Alberta. As part of Reading Day, Samida did a survey of the reading habits of 100 students from grade 4 to 6. Her results are shown in this table.
Okay. All right, so you can see that there were 34 out of 100 students that completed at least one book in a week. So you could just go on right down the table, and then 41 students at least one book in a month, 19 students at least one book every 3 months, and so on. Now the total is out of 100, okay, total of 100 students.
We can put these numbers on a hundreds grid to help us see the percents.
Okay, so that's 34%. This is showing 41%, another 19%, 4%, and 2%.
Once all the categories have been drawn, you can see all 100 squares are colored.
Okay, so what percentage of the students read one book every 3 months? So one book every 3 months. So we need this color, and you probably remember it already, but it's also a percentage out of 100. So if you don't remember, you can go ahead and you can count how many squares out of 100 does this light blue portion take up. Go ahead and type that into your chat. Very good, Kaylee. Yep, you just counted one off, Dakota, but you're really close. Yes, 19. Okay, so it was 19%. Cool.
Samida wanted to talk about the results she got for the girls. Sometimes we don't have exactly 100 items to work with, but we can still talk about those numbers as a percent.
Okay, so
We
this
have
is
50 girls.
sorry, I'm going to pause it for a second. This is where it gets slightly more complicated. When you're working with something out of 100, it's really easy because if I have 19 out of 100, right away it's 19%. You're easy, it's good to go. But if I'm working with a different number, like maybe 50, that's where finding percents gets a little bit more complicated.
How could we show which percent of girls read a book every 3 months? We use a hundreds grid to help us. The grid shows 10 girls reading one book every 3 months out of 50 girls total. This can be written as 10 over 50. If we add another grid, we would now have 100, and we can see how many girls out of 100 read a book once every 3 months. Once we put these two grids together, we can see the percent of girls who read a book every 3 months. 20% of girls read a book every 3 months. This is just like finding an equivalent fraction.
That's right. So you had 10 out of 50. You could drop those zeros, and you probably recognize 1/5 as a equivalent fraction to 20/100ths, which is also the same as 20%.
Now, try matching the survey results to the correct percent.
Okay, so we are going to, and you're just going to have to help me either by typing into the chat or just speaking up. We're going to drag and drop the percents on the right-hand part of the screen, so all of these percents, into the correct column. So notice we have 50 is our total, and I could take a picture of this too and start writing on top of the screen. That might help. Let me go ahead and pull up my sketch pad, and yes, it's from the last class, so I'll go ahead and clear it. And let me take a picture of it just so I can write. Okay, perfect. So let's look at, we have one book a week. So we have 10 out of 50 for our very first, there we go, very first category. Like we just actually worked with this particular example, so you probably already know. But you can drop those zeros and you're working with the fraction 1/5. Most people can recognize this right away as 20%. So that very first one was pretty darn easy. Sorry. We'll do a harder one. Oops. There we go. Okay. Now let's look at this one. I'm sorry, we'll skip back up here to one book in a week. So that's 16 out of 50. So I'll go back to my sketch pad here and I'm going to wipe that clean. 16 out of 50 isn't quite as easy to see. I mean, it is if you just set it up as out of 100. So here's what we would be solving for. And I know you guys have been doing a lot of cross multiplication. So if you don't know, you can just set it up like this. But to turn 50 into 100, you multiply by 2. So I would do the same thing to the 16 times 2 is 32. And all of you got that correct in the chat. So this is pretty easy for you, it looks like. Okay. So now we have one book in a month, so we have 21 out of 50. So I'll go ahead and show 21 out of 50. 21. Oh, geez. My pen is not great today. And we need to turn it into an equivalent fraction of out of 100. So yes, you guys have all got that correct. It's pretty simple. If you just multiply both by 2, 21 times 2, and all of you are telling me that is 42%. Perfect. The rest, we probably don't even really need to write down. 2 out of 50 is the same thing as saying 4 out of 100. And then the equivalent fraction, 1 out of 50, is the same thing as saying 2 out of 100. Okay. So now what do I do? Well, I don't need help, so now how do I go on? Let me go on!
Out of the 20 boys Samida surveyed, 7 of them like to read right after school, while 13 like to read just before bed. What percent of the boys like to read right after school? You can use the 100 grid, or you might try to think of the equivalent fraction to help you.
Okay. So yes, I'm not going to actually draw this one because they've already set up the equivalent fractions. So instead of out of 50, this time we're working with out of 20. So in my head, I know right away that if I multiply 20 times 5, I'm going to get 100. So if I multiply 7 times 5, which one of these would be correct? Or the equivalent fraction? That's right, 35. Good, all of you got that. Yay! Oh my gosh. All right, I'm just going to turn that off for now. Okay, so we are going to do just a couple practice problems before we move into more of the percent equals decimals equals fractions type of thing. So here we go. It'll take me just a second to pull it up. All right. Going all the way down. Here we go. Okay, so pretty simple review for you. How do you write 3/4 as a percent? So it's a common percentage. Most of you probably recognize it. Good job, TJ. Just waiting for a couple more people to type in what they think 3/4 is as a percentage. Okay, very good. So 75%. Awesome. Oh, all right. So this actually is asking us to convert between percents and decimals and fractions. So we have 15%. How would I write that as a decimal? Let me just, yeah, exactly. Good job, Jack. I'm going to clear my board and just show you a really easy way to see it. Okay. So when I look at 15%, I know that that means out of 100. So the equivalent fraction would be written like this, 15 hundredths. And so if you just say that word in your head, how do I write 15 hundredths? Well, there you go. Here's your tenths, here's your hundredths position, there's 15 hundredths. 0.15, there we go. All right, so this one's slightly more complex. How do you write 67% as a fraction in simplest form? So let's just start by writing it as a fraction. All right. Okay. Now, that's the 67 out of 100. There you go. There's your fraction. Now, when they say simplest form, that implies that maybe it can be reduced. But I'm looking at these two numbers and I don't know. I don't think they can be reduced. Does anybody think that there's a simpler way to write 67 hundredths? Or is that it? Kaylee's telling me that she found one way. So Kaylee, what would I do to 67 hundredths to make it simplest form?
Actually, I did that wrong. I didn't mean to do that.
Okay, yeah. Looking at that 7, you pretty much know that, it's not going to be divisible by any other number. So there we go. I think I'm going to write this correctly. I'm not sure exactly how they want me to do it, but okay, perfect. All right. How do you write 92 hundredths as a percentage? Good job, Jack. All of you got this one. This is actually pretty easy for you guys. So converting between decimals, fractions, and percents doesn't look like it's much of a challenge. Okay, now this one, I know that you can reduce. 40 out of 100, so sorry, it takes me just a second to take a new picture. How do you write 40% as a fraction in simplest form? Well, here is the original fraction, 40 out of 100. And yes, this can be reduced. So what would I divide basically each one of these numbers by? Well, 20 goes into both of them, right? So what if 40 divided by 20 equals 2, and 100 divided by 20 equals 5. So there we go. There is your simplest form for 40 hundredths. Yay! All right, let's last one on this one before we move on to a little game that we have. So how do I write 71 hundredths as a percentage? Ooh, easy stuff. 71 and then a percent. You got it. All right, guys, so let's move on to something maybe a little harder. And we have a game, so we have to make sure we read the directions or we won't understand it because it's somewhat complex, but not too bad. Okay, so here we have a game of dissension. It's a game of fractions, decimals, and percents. The intergalactic space games are held each year on the planet Rational. Teammates usually wear matching color uniforms, but there was a mix-up at the ISG warehouse this year. Instead of matching colors, teammates will be wearing uniforms with matching number values. For example, athletes' shirts contain values of maybe 1/2, 0.5 or 5/10, or 50%, and they would be on the same team. So give me a happy face if you understand so far. Into the chat, that is. Okay. So your job as the ISG director is to make sure all of the athletes get the correct starting place before the games begin. So there are 9 groups that we're going to have to sort, okay? And each new group is more challenging than the last. So it's going to start easy, and it's going to give us like an easy example, like this one, where I have the fraction 1/2, 0.5, and 50%. And then it's going to get harder and harder. So here we go. Okay. So looks like we are going to put like the 3 equivalent values, I guess, into each one of these different pods. So I'll just start by moving a couple around. I'll move all of the decimals. How about that? Okay, so that we can start on one end and just kind of work our way around. Okay, so let's start here on this left end with 4/10. What would be the equivalent percentage? So remember, percentage is the one that has the percent sign. The equivalent percentage of 4/10. Okay, I'm getting most people telling me 40%, and I agree with that. So now, what would be the equivalent fraction? So think 4 out of 10, but that can be reduced. Okay, I got one answer. So 4/10 can be reduced to 2/5. That's what most people have typed in. Okay, so now this one's super easy. 0.5 is the same as 1/2 and 50%. Not going to spend too much time on that one. 1/10. So when I say 1/10, I am talking about 1 over 10. So go ahead and type that correct fraction into the chat. Good. Very nice. And so 1/10 is the equivalent to 10%. Very good. All right, so it's getting easier and easier. 7/10. Which one of these says 7/10? Very good. Which is the equivalent to 70%. Yes. All right. So they started off pretty easy for us. It's going to get a little harder. I'll do what I did last time and I'll move the decimals so that we can just have somewhere to start. Okay. How about we start on the right side this time? So we'll start with 25 hundredths. All right, 25 hundredths. That's actually not a real hard one. 25 hundredths is the same fraction as, so if I'm looking at fractions, yes, 1/4. 1/4 can be written as what percentage? Good. Everyone's telling me, oops, sorry, 25%. Nice. So that one was pretty easy. Getting slightly harder, 15/10. I'm 15 hundredths, I'm sorry, 15 hundredths. Yes, that is 15%. Good job, guys. Now, the challenge is, how do I write 15 hundredths as a simplest form fraction? So write down 15 hundredths and then reduce. Good job, TJ. I'm going to show this one. I wish it would just like clear my board each time, but it doesn't. So, all right, 15 hundredths. And I'm trying to just reduce this to the simplest fraction possible. I'm looking at this and I know that both of these numbers are divisible by 5. So if I divide 15 by 5, I'm going to get 3. And if I divide 100 by 5, I would get 20. So let's go back to our game. And there it is, 3/20. Okay. 6/10. Right, so let's just show 6/10 and reduce that because they're not giving it to us easy. We have to reduce it. Ugh. I know that a 2 goes into both of those. So 6 divided by 2 is 3, and 10 divided by 2 is 5. So that would be the fraction I'm going to look for. 3/5. Where are we? Oh, there it is. And then, yes, the percentage is actually pretty easy, 60%. Good. All right. Let's skip down to, no, you know what? Let's do the harder one. 5 hundredths. Okay, so this is where people get, confused sometimes. But if you write it just like it sounds, 5 hundredths, you'll get it correct. So it's not 50, it's 5. So 5 divided by 5 is 1. 100 divided by 5 is 20. So that's a pretty small fraction. Remember, when you have a decimal and if you're going to turn it into a percent, all you really need to do is multiply by 100 to get your answer. So you'd move your decimal place over 2 spots, and that becomes 5%. Okay? All right. And then there it was. Okay, so round 2, slightly harder, but not bad. Okay, now we're going to get a little more complex. So I'm going to do what I have been doing and just put the decimals out there so that we can just kind of see things more clearly. Okay, so some of you are probably starting to maybe memorize some of these fractions and decimals and percents that, are very common that you see often. You see this one pretty often. 0.8 or 8/10 is equivalent to what percentage? 80%. Good. And most of you are starting to recognize that that is equivalent to 4/5. So some of these fractions and percentages and decimals are just going to start coming natural to you as you just kind of remember them because you see them a lot. So that's a common one. 35 or 35 hundredths, that's not too common, but 35% is not that hard to work with. Now, the only challenge would be finding the fraction format. So 35 hundredths can be reduced. I'm going to divide them both by 5 again because they're both multiples of 5. So 35 divided by 5, divided by 5, yes, is 7. And then 100 divided by 5 is 20. So that one wasn't too bad. You probably remember this particular example because we just did it. So 5 hundredths is equivalent to, very good Dakota, 5%, which can be written how? Good job, Jack. 1/20th. Perfect. This is a repeat example as well. 15 hundredths is equivalent to 15%, which when you write it in fraction form can be reduced to which one of these two? Good job, TJ. 15 hundredths can be reduced to 3/20ths. Good. Now, I mean, it's pretty obvious what why is this not scrolling down? There we go. The rest of our answer is, but you can probably start to look at these and start seeing the relationship between all of them. 4 hundredths can be written as 4 over 100, which is easily reduced to 1/25th. If you look at this decimal, 4 hundredths, and you multiply it by 100, you would just simply move your decimal place over 2 times, and there would be your percent, 4%. So give me a happy face in the chat if this is all starting to come together and make sense for you, the relationship between all of those. Yeah, you guys are doing really well. Good. Let's see if they can make it any harder. All right. Okay, so just to get the clutter out, I'm just gonna I'll move the decimals again. And we're gonna go kind of fast because you guys are catching on really quickly. The relationship between all of them. Okay, so 1/100th can be written how? Go ahead and type, you can type both of them into the chat, the percentage and the fraction if you like. 1/100th, very good. Cannot be reduced, so there's the fraction form, and then of course that is equal to 1%. Very nice. 25 hundredths, go ahead and write both the percentage and the fraction. Good job, TJ. Excellent, Kaylee. Good job, Dakota. So yes, it is definitely 25%, which can also be 1/4. Good. Because if I wrote 25 over 100, it would reduce to 1/4. Okay, 2/10 can be written as, good, 20%, which is also equivalent to 1/5. You guys are quick. Yes, go ahead, Dakota. You can just speak up because your microphone's on. So do you have a question?
No, I was just wondering if we can just raise our hands.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's fine. Tell me what I need to put in this next circle. Go ahead.
85%.
That's right. And then this is slightly trickier. It's not that bad, but 85% or 85 out of 100. So I'm going to have to do a little bit of reducing. to find the simplest form. So I know right away if I divide both by 5, what's 85 divided by 5? Because we know 100 divided by 5 is 20. So 85 divided by 5, very good. Most of you are getting it. 85 divided by 5 is 17. Okay, so that was our hardest example yet. So 17/20ths, there we go. And then, of course, 65 hundredths is equivalent to 65%. And then that would be 13/20ths once you wrote the actual 65 over 100 and then reduced it. Okay, I think this is our last level, but they're getting a little harder. So I'm just going to move them out, move out the decimals. Where's my other? Oh, sorry. There we go. Okay, so let's just start on this side this time. We'll start on the left. So I have 0.333. Anybody want to tell me which two little buttons or whatever I need to move into the same circle? You could type it into the chat or you can raise your hand. Very good, Jack. Good job. So most of you are saying that this is the equivalent percentage. Now we have to figure out the equivalent fraction where this part gets a little harder. This is something that you're going to start to recognize. And you know what? I'm going to leave it. I'm going to leave it, and we're going to come back to that one as far as the equivalent fraction, so that I can show maybe all of them at the end, because that's probably the hardest part. This one's super easy, though. 75 hundredths. This is something that you guys need to recognize because it's a very common fraction. 75 hundredths is, yes, 75% or 3/4. So that one's just cake. We're going to move on. Okay, now this one, the percentage is easy again, right? To find the percentage, if you have a decimal, all you do is multiply by 100 or move your decimal place over 2 places. So yes, all of you are telling me that that is 16.7%. Anybody want to take a guess at which one of the fractions? Okay, so we have at least one guess is 1/6, but let's come back to that at the end. Let's do the hard part at the end. Okay, so this one's pretty simple. 83.3%. Whoops, sorry. I just gave you the answer. Woo! 0.833 is 83.3%. Okay. Woo! And then 0.125 is just 12.5%. So now we're kind of left with the harder part, finding the fractions that go with all of these. Well, not this one's done, but that go with these different values. So let's just think of a couple ways that we can do this. Let's start with this example right here. I'm going to take a picture of it. I'm going to take a picture of the whole screen. Okay, so now, sorry, it gets a little smaller and it's not quite as easy to see, but at least I can write on top of it. All right, so we have 33.3%. How would I, and you can type this into the chat or you can raise them all, or raise your hand. How would I start if I wanted to take a decimal format and turn it into a percent? Well, that part was easy. We just multiplied by 100 and we moved our decimal place over. So there we go. But now I need to figure out what 33.3% is in relationship to 100. So I can write it as a fraction. And I'm just going to kind of round it to like 33 out of 100. And just by looking at these choices below, you should know that this is the only one that would be anywhere near that percent. So 1/3. So it's just kind of a little bit, oh yes, thank you, Dakota, for helping me on the time. A little bit of just common sense there. And then I know that this, look at this one. I'm going to skip to this one right here. This is a really pretty big percentage. 83% is pretty big. It's pretty close to 100%. So looking at these fractions, which one is pretty big? Yeah, there we go. You guys got it. Perfect. Now I have two left. Where are they going? Oh no, 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 no. Oh, sorry. I guess I clicked on something else and it went away for a second. There we go. Now I'm looking at 16.7% and I'm looking at 12.5%. And 12.5% is a little bit smaller. So which one of these fractions is smaller? Good, 1/8. Okay. Yay! All right. So we don't have time to probably play a whole nother round, but I would love it if you guys stayed on this particular website, and you can find it by going back to your agenda. And if you just click on this link right here, that's where that game was found. And they just get harder and harder, but it's going to challenge you to start seeing those relationships between percentages, decimals, and fractions. But you guys have done a fantastic job today. Are there any questions before we go? Okay, so it would be, yes, very good. You got the right website, Dakota. Fantastic. It would be really cool if you guys went to that website and just, played a few rounds for yourself. Okay? All right, guys, give me a wave. Goodbye. Bye. Have a great weekend. Bye.